Today I'm going to gather some plantain. I want to show you what it looks like. I've cut some of it off and put it in my bowl. But this is what plantain looks like. This is the broadleaf plantain. You can see how the leaf is made, and it has a more like a square stem with the purple in the center. See that purple center? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut pieces of this off and put it in my bowl, and I'm going to make a plantain salve out of it because this stuff is really good for insect bites. You could make a poultice out of this and put it on a wasp or sting or any kind of insect bite. And I'm going to make a salve out of just the plantain only so that I'll have it on hand in the event that I might get an insect bite. So this is very beneficial. And I remember as a young girl, my grandmother's picking this stuff out of the yard because it just grows in your yard. A lot of people think it's just a weed and they'll weed it or mow it down. But I remember my grandmother's taking this and just chewing it up and taking it out of their mouth and rubbing it on a bee sting. It's really good for that. So I'm going to cut this because my husband is getting ready to mow soon. So I'm going to get out here and cut this before he gets out here and mows it. Okay, so here's my plantain on my herb drying rack. So we're gonna let this sit here for a couple of weeks until my leaves get dry, and then we'll infuse it. Now our plantain leaf has dried. It's been in here for several weeks. So now we're gonna get ready to fill up a mason jar. So I filled my jar all the way to the top, and I'm going to take this wooden spoon and mash all of that dried herb matter down, and then we're going to get ready and pour our olive oil on top. Remember to use a good oil when you're infusing your herb. Here I use extra virgin olive oil. It's just a Walmart brand. And we're going to need to pour over the top of our herb. Here you can see that I ran out of olive oil, so I'm going to go grab another bottle real quick and finish filling this jar up. And I only needed enough oil to cover over the herb, so that's why it's not all the way to the rim, just enough to cover your herb. Okay, this is my plantain in my jar with olive oil. You can see how it has settled. And then every little bit I have done this. I have just given it a good shake. You want to do it back and forth. Do it as you remember. This has been in there since June the 16th. Today is August the 1st, so I am going to strain this either today or tomorrow, and then we're going to make it into our salve and add it to our tins. And just remember to give your herb mix a good shake as often as you can remember during the 4 to 6 weeks that you have it infusing. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about plantain. It's called a common weed of footpaths and lawns. It was used as an herb in pre-Christian time and has followed European settlers around the world. So this is a very, very good herb. And this picture shows the other variety. It's the longer leaf. I use the broad leaf in my salve making, but this just gives you an up-close view of the other type of plantain that's out there with the longer leaves. And I'm taking my information from the Backyard Medicine book. I'll try to link it down in the description below. But just so that you will know a little bit about plantain, it says that it is the #1 field remedy for insect stings and bites. However, there is so many different things that plantain can be used for. Right here it tells you a crushed leaf rubbed onto the painful area will bring relief at once. It's almost miraculous. And it is. People can attest to how it actually works on your skin. It's just a common weed. But there's so many other benefits, and this book goes into more detail about what it can be used for. You can use it as a tea. There's another picture of it. I showed you that in the beginning of my video. But it has a very long history. It tells you how to harvest it, how to make the tea. You can even do a tincture with an alcohol. But since I'm making a salve, that's what I'm actually showing you guys. So it's very useful, beneficial, a great herb to use, not just for insect stings, bites, but many, many other things that you can look into. Okay, for my salve making, I'm going to use How to Make a Medicinal Salve. And this is from Rosemary Gladstar's Medicinal Herbs. I'll link this book down below in the description. But this tells you a few good tricks on making your oil. So once you have infused your herb in your oil, it says for each cup of finished herbal oil, and that means after you've strained it, you will add 1/4 cup of beeswax. Then you'll heat the oil and the beeswax together over very low heat, stirring occasionally until the beeswax has melted. Once you have done that step, then you will pour it into your tin or glass jar. In this case, I have tins I will show you, and you'll let that cool, and you'll store it in a cool, dark place. Okay, I have my strainer in my bowl. This is just a plastic bowl. I couldn't find a glass bowl, so I'm just going to use a plastic. And I think I got this strainer from the Dollar Tree. It wasn't much. And I'm using this cheesecloth, so I'm going to cut a piece of this to put over this. And we're going to strain it, and then we're going to measure it out in these cups. This is a 2-cup measuring cup. I've got a couple of these, and then I have a 1-cup measuring cup. Okay, there's my piece of cheesecloth. And I'm going to start pouring a little at a time. Now let me stop right there. Make sure that my cheesecloth is even here. Probably should have did it a little bit wider, but it's okay. I can make it work. And see how that collects those plantain particles. You don't want to put your particles into your salve mixture. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the bowl once it gets so full, and then empty it into my 2-cup measuring cup over here. So let's see, let's do a little more. Now we're getting down to the plantain particle, the slush. And I want to try to make sure I get all of that good infused oil out of there. And let that sit there just for a minute and strain through. I'm going to stop and empty what's in my bowl into one of my 2-cup measuring cups. Yay, look how pretty that is. Now I'm going to pour this into my measuring cup. Looks like we have about 1 1/3 cups so far. Of the oil. Okay. Alright. Now I'm going to strain a little more off of this. So this time I'm just going to pour all of that plantain leaf down into there and let that sit and strain. I want to make sure I get as much as I can out of this jar. So I may have to get me a spatula and scrape inside of there because there's still a few bits and pieces there. Okay, I'm going to turn the video off while I scrape this out. Let that sit and strain, and we'll be right back. Okay, now what I did was I bundled all that up into my cheesecloth bag, and I'm going to squeeze it. As you can see, by doing that, you're still getting a lot of that good oil out of there. I'm going to get as much as I can. Okay, I had to stop for just a second. Wash my hands. Now I'm going to put some more into this cup. So right about there is 2 cups. And notice I have just a little bit left, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to add this to it. But I want to have an even 2 cups so that I can measure my beeswax in order to put it in. Okay, now what I did was I went ahead and washed up that same jar and I dried it out with my towel. And I am going to pour this 2-cup mixture back into this jar because I'm going to add my beeswax into that and put it on my makeshift double boiler. So let that drain off as best as I can. It's a little bit difficult to get down to the last little bit of nitty-gritty. You can stand there all day and let that drip, or take a spatula and just kind of scrape that out. It's hard for me to do that because I'm trying to video. I need to get a tripod to put my phone on so I can do better with this, but I'm going to let that kind of drip down. A few more drips. And I know that's 2 cups. I'm going to add just this other little bit to the mixture because I don't want to waste any of that good infused oil for salve making. I'll stop right there. Okay, now I know I have a little over 2 cups, so we're going to see how much beeswax we need to put in this. Okay, what I'm going to show you here, I ordered these yellow beeswax bars. They're 100% natural grade A, triple filtered, They're 1 ounce bars. There's a total of 6. And I have taken out 2 of these bars. See that? They're yellow. I prefer to use the beeswax pellets because they are white. However, today for my plantain salve, I'm going to use these. Now I have 2 cups of oil in my jar. A little over 2 cups actually. So for 1 cup, I need 1/4 cup of beeswax. These are 1 ounce. So on my conversion over here, I know that 1/4 cup is 2 ounces. And I have 2 cups. And these little bars are 1 ounce. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to grate them. I'm just going to drop them down into my oil. There's 2 of them, okay? And I'm going to put this on a makeshift double boiler over here. I'll fill this pot with a little bit of water. And I'll sit my jar down in there. And it's safe to use a canning jar because you pressure can with your jars. So I prefer to use these. I have used a measuring cup before to make my salve, but this time I'm going to do my jar. So I'll go ahead and stop the video, put a little water in here, turn it up, and then we're going to let this melt into that oil so we can pour it into our tins. Okay, now I've got I put about a little over a cup of water in there. And then I'm going to sit my jar of oil. And the water's just enough that it'll heat it up to melt this wax. And that's the goal. I want to melt that wax before I pour it into my tin. So we'll let this boil and melt. And I'm going to take a wooden stir and stir it a little bit at a time as it's boiling. Okay, I put it on medium to let it start heating up, and then I turned it down to a little above low. So I will let that sit there until that beeswax melts. It's already starting to melt, you can see, and just stir it a little along. So I'm going to keep it on low heat until it melts. With the 2 bars in there, I added just a little bit of the pastels or the pellets because I added extra oil, but I only had 2 ounces in the 2 ounce bars. So here's another 1/4 cup, and I needed another 1/4 cup for that extra cup of oil. So I'm going to add this into my jar. I've let the other bars and a little bit of the pellets melt, and now I'm just going to add these since that other started to melt. You want to make sure you have the proper amount. So for 1 cup of oil, you had to have 1/4 cup of beeswax. But remember, I had a little over 2 cups of oil. So I needed 2 of these and a little extra. So I put the 2 bars in 1 of these and then maybe a spoonful of beeswax. And I'm going to try to check it to see the consistency because it's starting to really melt down good. It's going to take a little bit of time for all of that to melt down. Now these are the tins that I bought this time. See that? These are pretty. I put my cayenne pepper salve, and I have a video on here of that, in a rose gold colored, and I wanted this pretty teal blue color for my plantain salve. And this actually came with some labels, but I have my own labels that I use. I'll keep these labels for something else, however. But I think these are let's see, 2 ounce. They're 2 ounce tins. Holds quite a bit. And there's 28 of them. And I will try to remember to link all this stuff in the description box, because I got these on Amazon as well. Now I've prepped my area. This is just my sink counter with some wax paper. And I do that because when you're filling these, it spills. It can spill, so you have to be careful not to create such a mess. So I'm going to put out about 6 at a time. I don't know how many I'll fill. I'll let you know at the end when we're finished. Okay, there's another quick look at how the beeswax pellets are melting. And I have just a little over low heat. So it's going to take a little bit for all that to completely melt. When it melts, you won't be able to see any of those little pieces in there. It'll fully dissolve. Okay, now the beeswax has completely melted. And if you want to do a little test to make sure that your consistency is correct, then just put a tablespoon of your liquid onto a paper plate, stick it into the freezer for a couple minutes, and you can see how it hardens. See that? So that's how it's going to look when it hardens in our tin. I've rubbed over the top of it a little bit, but I like the consistency because I'm just making a salve, and I think that will work. Okay, so now what we're going to do next is we're going to take and pour the oil into our tins after I have let it sit here for a little bit. Now I've let it sit so my jar is not hot. And I'm going to pour it into my tin. Okay, there's one. I want to see how much of this I'll have left. There's a little line inside of there. I'm going to try to go there first and then come back and I can add more to it. But once you get your jars filled, then you're going to let it sit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop this and fill the rest of my 8 little tins here. Okay, we made 11 2-ounce tins out of all of that. The beeswax gave it more volume, so thought I was going to have about 8, ended up with 11, and you can see how it's already starting to harden up. Let's see that one compared to that one. Some of them are just freshly poured, but you can tell how they're starting to set already. So I'm going to let them sit and harden, and they'll be ready to cap.